Julie, welcome back.
Happy New Year.
I know. All right, Julie, how were your holidays?
My holidays were great. How were my holidays? I went down to the Bahamas. I went to the Atlantis. Have you ever been down there?
I have not.
It is a kid paradise. It's like incredibly kid friendly. And the reason I went down there is typically we go somewhere over the winter break, my son and I, just the two of us for some mommy, little boy time alone without anybody else. And this year I've been so busy with Lift Our Voices and with traveling back and forth. When I went out to LA, if you remember a few weeks ago, around early mid-December, for the launch of Lift Our Voices, as I'm flying back from LA, I'm thinking, oh my God, I totally forgot to book this vacation. So I panicked and I booked something at the Atlantis, which I'd never been to, but had been totally susceptible to the commercials as a place that's good for kids. And it really was. It was great. So I came back with a little bit of an injury, as you can see my finger, because there's some ride.
What ride, Julie?
Well, it was a very kind of lame ride called Rapid River, which is neither a river nor rapid, but you had to get on these like floating tires. They were kind of these inflated sort of donut type tires, and the walls were all terracotta. And so, of course, for those of us who are less than coordinated, I had to jump onto this thing, and of course, I completely wipe out.
No,
I have this humongous black and blue on a part of my body that was covered by my bikini, luckily. But I also have this weird gash, which people who are listening to this can't speak on my finger, but you can see it's really gross. Oh. Anyway, I was totally mocked by a 7-year-old. For being completely uncoordinated. But it was so much fun. We had such a good time, and it was just a pleasure to spend just some alone time with him and just have, like a good bonding experience. The weather did not cooperate, unfortunately, as well as it should have, but it was great. It was wonderful. How was your holiday? I know you were in the great state of Florida.
I was in Florida. It was nice. I did.
Sorry, Florida, not Florida.
Florida,
right.
Correct. I did quite a few workout classes. It was 80 degrees.
Oh,
I went running a lot.
Nice.
It was just the typical. We have a ton of peacocks and peahens, which are quite an interesting sight, and they have this loud yap,
right,
which woke me up multiple mornings. But because I used to live right near an orange grove, and that orange grove has since been knocked down, but that was a peacock's home.
Wow.
So yeah.
I didn't know they had peacocks in Florida. I guess they would, but I never saw peacocks in Florida.
Yes, it's very weird just to see a whole bunch of them. So that was interesting. And then for New Year's, I went to Philly and celebrated the New Year there. So
how was it?
It was really fun.
You went to a party? What'd you do?
We went to in the neighborhood there. I forget the bar's name, but it was really fun, and it was just low key, and it wasn't crazy crowded like New York.
Oh, really? Yeah. Philly has really, I don't know if people know this, Philly has this amazing restaurant scene, and I only know this because I have a lot of friends who live either in Philly or in South Jersey, which is close to Philly, and it's like an amazing, amazing restaurant scene. And Philly's one of those cities I never think about because it's kind of between New York and Washington, where I spend a lot of time. But I should go to Philly more often. Don't you think I think it's a great city.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's really great. So, Julie, give me an update on Lift Our Voices. How is that going?
Lift Our Voices is awesome. So if you remember, I think we talked about it the last time before we broke for vacation, but we had, Gretchen Carlson, Dana Falzone, and I had sent a letter on behalf of Lift Our Voices to all presidential candidates, Republican, Democrat, Independent, anybody who's filed to run, effectively saying, come join us and support banning non-disclosure agreements for specifically toxic work environment issues. So clearly not for proprietary campaign information like polling or for research or things like that. But if somebody's getting harassed or somebody's being spoken to in a really abusive way or something toxic that's not proprietary information, please make sure that you don't have not only do you not have NDAs on your campaign, but that you won't support NDAs going forward if you're president, if legislation like this ends up in your desk. And we decided to give them till this week because obviously we understood. We sent it the day before the last debate, so we understood that they were prepping for their debates. And then we went into Christmas, and then we went into New Year's, so we said, okay, we'll give them until this week to get back to us. And lo and behold, I want to say Joe Walsh. Joe Walsh was running against Donald Trump in the Republican primary. Former Congressman, talk show host Joe Walsh immediately responded to us like that day via tweet and said he doesn't have NDAs and he doesn't support them and he wants more transparency. And so I thought that was very nice of him. And then today, Vice President Biden's campaign sent out a very wonderful statement supporting our mission and saying that they don't use NDAs on their campaign and that they are they obviously support not enforcing NDAs for toxic work issues, specifically sexual harassment and gender discrimination. And then shortly thereafter, a few hours later, Senator Booker from my home state of New Jersey sent a very good statement as well. Now, Biden said he doesn't have NDAs on his campaign. Booker apparently does have NDAs on his campaign, but said they only relate to proprietary campaign information, which I will assume is polling and research and things like that, and that he doesn't support enforcing them for toxic work issues.
It's a big deal, Julie.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge deal. So Elizabeth Warren, Pete Buttigieg, Bill Weld, Donald Trump, I'm just naming a few people on both sides of the aisle. Get on it, because today's Mondays. We're recording this Monday afternoon, and I think by the end of this week we're going to name the people who were on the right side of this issue and those who declined to get on it. So again, this is a totally apolitical issue. And let me remind people again, a third of American workers are bound by NDAs, and most of them do not have the secret formula to Coca-Cola. It is used largely to enforce toxic workplace behavior. And so I hope every presidential candidate on both sides of the aisle gets on board with this. It's really just a very important issue, and it's not a political issue at all. So get on board, people.
So, Julie, this week I came into work and I came in on Wednesday and thought it wouldn't be a too stressful day. And by the end of the day, we could be in World War III.
I know.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. This is exactly what I think people kind of feared when Donald Trump got elected. And I always said, you keep talking about, well, so-and-so is the worst candidate in the world, and so-and-so is the worst president ever. And I kind of, I think George Bush has had a really rehabilitated career, right, as time has gone on, especially in light of Donald Trump.
Right.
But then I always think about the fact that George Bush really got us into a horrible war in Iraq that has cost, hundreds of thousands of lives, not obviously just American lives, but also lives in the Middle East, and really reshaped the Middle East, and not necessarily for the better.
I can give you exact numbers.
Yes.
200,000 civilians killed, nearly 5,000 U.S. and coalition troops killed, more than $2 trillion spent.
Thank you. So that's obviously horrific and awful, and just, what else can you say other than horrific and awful? So I always kind of said, okay, Trump is awful in my opinion, but however, he hasn't really done that. And then lo and behold, what does Donald Trump do? I mean, look, for everybody what's so interesting to me, having been at Fox, so I got to Fox in 2004, back when Swift boating was a thing, and they were talking about how John Kerry is anti-American because John Kerry was opposing the Iraq War and yada, yada. And the same rhetoric, it's like the same stuff you hear again. You say, I can't believe they killed this guy Soleimani, who's obviously an awful terrorist, but they're saying, well, do you support terrorism? You don't support killing this guy? Like, it's the same stuff. If you don't support it, you're anti-American. You support the terrorists. You don't support. This is like exactly the same rhetoric. It's like these people. It's like when I went to a Bon Jovi concert about 10 years ago, and I had not seen anything like it since 1986. But all the girls with the big Jersey hair were there, and I was like, where have you people been for the last 30 years? Like, couldn't believe. Like, I didn't understand where they had been walking around with this big Jersey hair for the last 30 years. Same thing here. I'm like, where have you people been since like 2004? Same exact talking points, same exact language. Oh, okay, you obviously support the terrorists if you don't support killing this guy. No, what I support is an informed strategic decision. And what this has effectively done, and I remember this happened and I tweeted out, and lo and behold, it's not that I'm so prescient, it's that this was apparent to anybody with a third grade education. What does Iraq do? Iraq says we want all American troops out of Iraq because this guy was killed on Iraqi soil. So we just assassinated somebody, killed somebody on their soil without consulting them, apparently. They want us out of there. Okay, so one of two things. Either we get out of there, as our Iraqi quote-unquote allies want us to, or we don't get out of there, in which case we're now occupying a country that does not want us there, which means that we're going to have to send a hell of a lot more troops over there to keep the peace because they're going to start riding against us. So, okay, what's going to happen when the void is filled, when we leave? Iran is going to fill that void because apparently, unlike unlike Donald Trump, I know the difference between Sunni and Shia. And the reality is there is a Shia majority in Iraq, and they are, as is Iran. And the void will be filled by the Iranians. You just strengthened the Iranians' hand tremendously. And this whole there was about to be an attack on our installations or on American interests. This guy, you know who this guy has done the most to harm Israel, right? He was enabling Hezbollah. He was 100% behind the Iranian nuclear program. I mean, everything that Bibi Netanyahu hates was embodied by this guy. Why didn't the Israelis get him for the last 20 years? The Israelis have the ability to get this guy, no problems, no questions asked. I mean, they're just really good at this stuff. Ask yourself, why didn't Israel get this guy? Because the Israelis obviously made an educated and calculated decision that getting him was going to open up a Pandora's box that ultimately was going to cause more harm than good for their interests. Right. And that is exactly what happened here. He was a really bad guy. So was Saddam Hussein. Did we really believe that getting Saddam Hussein was in our best interest? No. What was in our best interest is when Iraq and Iran were fighting with each other in the 1980s, and therefore two bad regimes were fighting against each other. Having dispatched one side of that equation, we've just now empowered and continue to really strongly empower the other side of that equation. We made Iran a lot stronger by doing what Donald Trump authorized us to do last week. So I don't know if we're on the brink of war. I just want to remind people Iran is much bigger than Iraq and much more complicated. And we've also empowered the Russians, because once Iran has more influence in Iraq, which it will, guess who also will? The Russians, whose proxies often they are. So congratulations, Donald Trump. Vladimir Putin just got helped out by you again.
Well, and to even buttress your point, today I interviewed a Green Beret, a former Green Beret, and he was in Iraq in 2007. But he told me, he's like, his name's Jason McCarthy. He said, bigger picture, what's interesting is that an Iranian general landed at Baghdad International Airport to discuss strategy of any kind. The Iran-Iraq war is completely over. Saddam Hussein never would have accepted such a general. This is the Sunni Shia power shift that has happened in Iraq post the U.S.-led invasion in 2003.
Yeah.
So exactly what you said.
Exactly what I mean. It's obvious, and it's pretty miraculous to me. And I was there was a famous incident about this with one of my co-hosts at Fox a few years ago. It is interesting to me how many people who opine on this don't understand the difference between Sunni and Shia, don't understand that they pretty much hate each other with a passion. And Saddam Hussein ruled over a Sunni minority. And with him being gone, Shia obviously have developed a tremendous, much more influence. You know who else has benefits? Somewhat. It remains to be seen, but I can see why Jared Kushner might think so. The Saudis. Because this guy was really working very much against Saudi interests in Yemen and other places. And so what I find fascinating is how much we continue to do for the Saudis, who are more responsible for terrorism in this country, at least, than anybody else. How much we continue to do for a regime that killed a green card holder, the Washington Post journalist that they beheaded, if you recall, in Turkey. How much we continue to do to help the Russians by our actions. And just what a short-sighted decision this was. It's just stunning to me. It's just stunning. And of course, you have the usual suspects, Lindsey Graham, who never met a war he didn't want to send somebody's kid to. Come on. I mean, this is just, it's absurd. And there are going to be repercussions, and I don't know what they are, but they're not good for us. Even if there's no attack on our homeland. It is not good for us and our interest in the Middle East and our larger global interests. And so it's sad.
Well, and another interesting point that I want to bring to it is, so again, today, I did a lot of interviews today.
Right.
I spoke to a cybersecurity expert from NYU, and he had mentioned that the Iran deal kept the Iranians in check when it came to cyber warfare, and that now the gloves are completely off. And it's especially troubling since Iran had launched a successful cyber attack in 2016. That's when Iranian hackers infiltrated the computerized controls of a small dam in Rye, New York, right outside of the city. So it's all pretty troubling.
Yeah, and they just pulled out of the nuclear agreement.
Right.
The other thing that's interesting is think about what Trump has been doing, right? Trump has been extolling the virtues of Vladimir Putin. He's been extolling the virtues of Recep Erdogan. He's been extolling the virtues of MBS, Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. He has not really been extolling the virtues of our NATO allies, i.e. our coalition partners in Iraq, who went into Iraq and Afghanistan with us, especially into Afghanistan with us, not Iraq, but Afghanistan with us. So you need friends when you do something like this around the world to help you. You need intelligence agencies that are going to share information with you. And we now have heard over the last few years that there is a chill on sharing information among some of our closest allies, like the Brits and the Australians, because they don't trust Trump. They just don't trust him not to share it with people they don't want it to be shared with. And when you have France, which, everybody's going to say, well, France, France was against us during the Iraq War. I mean, I worked in the Senate when they changed French fries to freedom fries because they were so stupid. But the reality is France is a major coalition partner. And it is the second largest country in Western Europe. And there's a reason for why we need them as allies. We need the Germans as allies. The Germans always had a pipeline to Iran. And we were able to work with them to advance our interest in Iran when we couldn't do it directly. Certainly the Brits are the Brits. And Boris Johnson is not a strong prime minister. And we need them to help us. And when you spend all your time just completely disparaging your allies, well, who do you think is going to stand by you, right? If I spend every day talking about what an ungrateful friend you are, Emily, while, buttressing some jerk who has nothing whatsoever to do with anything that's good for me, I don't think you'd be willing to help me out much, right? After you've done everything to help me all these years. And so that's exactly what we've been doing with our allies, and it's horrible. And I am incredibly just disgusted by the naivete of this guy. And, he's got a cabinet that can't keep him in check. And by the way, where are you? Oh, I don't know, Rex Tillerson or John Kelly or Mattis or any of these people who served earlier, who ostensibly were responsible adults. Now is the time to speak up. It really is. I mean, now is the time. This is your bailiwick. Maybe not Tillerson so much; he's an oil executive, but Mattis and
right.
and Kelly, speak up. Speak up. Now is the time to do it. Not anonymously, not through leaks. Put your credibility on the line. Your nation needs you. Stop hiding behind your, military. Oh, the military doesn't get engaged. The military doesn't get involved. You're former cabinet officials. And in the case of Kelly, you're a former chief of staff. You're long past your military career. So just do it.
I also think that the Iranians may take a page from the Russian handbook when it comes to disinformation on social media and really amping that up too as election time comes and as facts, I think, around a war or conflict become even more important. I think there's a big potential for that as well.
Yeah.
So it's scary.
It's scary because you realize how little thought went into. I mean, when you read that the reason that they presented Trump with the option to assassinate this guy was because they presented him with a bunch of apparently better options, and they presented this as like oh my God, this is like a ridiculous option we're going to show you, but it's ridiculous, and he signs off on it and initiates it. It's just, who do we elect? I mean, we elected a hustler who scammed his way through reality television. Everything he's ever done in life is a farce. he was on the verge of bankruptcy until he got bailed out by The Apprentice, and he only got bailed out of The Apprentice. He give me a break. And this is who's now deciding issues of war and peace, and it's just appalling to me. And it's how little thought goes into anything that he does. And now he's surrounded himself with a bunch of equally moronic people like Jared Kushner, who also almost drove his family's financial interests into the ground, and was only saved by the fact that now has been bailed out by all these foreign governments because, of who he is, because he works in the White House. There's nobody there who knows what the hell they're doing. Our defense secretary is a former lobbyist for a defense contractor. Well, guess which stocks really went up just now? I mean,
right.
We should have, and I'd love to know who in this administration invested in defense stocks.
That would be
before. I mean, it's just, the whole thing is just, I can't,
Well, while we're on the subject of salty.
Yes.
What's making you salty, Julie?
What's making me salty? What's making me salty is actually this whole notion of the lack of thought that people, we touched on it, but the lack of thought that people put into stuff, right? And it's the minute Trump, remember when Maureen Dowd did that infamous column, Hillary the Hawk, Donald the Dove. God. Remember that? Which Maureen Dowd, it's time. She might want to do a follow up on that. By the way. I mean, apparently she hasn't yet, but I'd love to read her do a mea culpa on that. It'd be nice if people actually did a mea culpa once in a while on dumb predictions that they had. I've tried to do that in my life at least. But what happened with people is that if Trump said, I want to pull all troops out of the Middle East, the same people are like, this is great. Yes, fantastic. We want to pull all troops out of the Middle East. No more war. Like the Tucker Carlson model, right? And then the minute Trump decides he's going to put more troops in and he's going to start, interfering in other people's governments and start doing American quote unquote expansionism and all the stuff that everybody was so supportive of him doing, Tucker, to his credit, actually has been consistent, but from what I understand. But all these other people are like, oh yeah, Donald Trump is so right. If you're not with if you're not with him, you're with the terrorists. It's this where's the critical thinking? Is there any critical thinking going on? It happens on both sides of the aisle. I'm not pretending it doesn't. But I mean, is there any critical thinking by this cult of people just saying, this is absurd?
Did you listen to the Howard Stern interview with Hillary Clinton?
I heard excerpts of it. I didn't hear the whole thing.
Okay, there was this really great part of it where she's talking about the decision that Obama made to get bin Laden. And she was talking about how Biden did not agree that they should go in with the SEAL team and that she did. And that, Obama wanted his cabinet to argue and have a discussion about it. And it wasn't just a one-person decision. It was a discussion. And then she said that Obama, before making the decision, said, you know what, I'm going to take the night. I'm going to sleep on it. And Howard Stern asked Hillary Clinton what she thought. He's like, do you think that's weak? She's like, absolutely not. The fact that he wanted to weigh a decision and take it and go to sleep, she's like, I admire that. He knew what was at stake. And first of all, it made me want Hillary in. It made me want Obama back. I went through so many emotions, but it's that kind of thought and just mulling it over, not completely going with the last person you just heard.
It's not even going to the last person you heard. It's like, can you just, I'm not even talking about Trump. Trump is Trump, and Trump's always going to be Trump, and Trump is, I think, really has mental issues. But it's all the people who are following him down the cliff. It's just so, I was about to curse, which I never do, but it's so freaking annoying. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's just, I remember when Obama was really weak on Russian sanctions. Basically, after it was apparent that they interfered in the election, or they were interfering in the election, he didn't do what I consider to be enough. And I mean, I went on Fox, and I remember this, and Fox promoted it, as you can imagine, the hell out of it, because they loved the fact that I was going negative on Obama. But I really, really, really strongly condemned Obama. I thought he wasn't strong enough on Russia. I really thought his policy towards Russia was not strong enough. You can do that even if you like the president, generally, because you have your own brain and you have ability to think critically. And there are certain things that you like, and not everything has to be 100%. There's not a 100% loyalty test.
Right.
This is not your child whom you're supposed to love unconditionally. And by the way, if you raise your children that way and you think everything they do is perfect, you're going to be raising really dumb, horrible children. So if you're not going to apply that to your child whom you're supposed to love more than anything in the world, why would you apply that to your president?
Also, if you have children, you should be thinking about the thought of them going to war.
Well, but that's the thing.
Too.
I mean, I love how like Eric Trump, God bless Eric Trump. Oh yeah, this is great if we go to war. Yeah, you know what, Eric? You're not going to war.
Right.
Guess who's like, I'm not going to war.
Right.
Guess who's going to war? It's going to be the poor black and brown kids who are going to war because that's who goes to war. I'm sorry. Look who goes to war.
Right.
And it's... Have we not had enough? Like, honestly, have we just not had enough? I'm not even talking about going to war, but have we not had enough of this unconditional support? And all these people who love Trump. Remember when Trump lied and said he was against the Iraq war from the beginning? And then, of course, it comes out that on Howard Stern, he, of course, was not. They found some old Howard Stern tape of him saying that he supported the war, that he didn't oppose it. But it's the same. That's why I'm saying it's like 2003, 2004, all over again. It's the same nonsense. This drumbeat of, if the president says so, you've got to be with the president. And by the way, I don't know how you feel about this. The irony of he said the intelligence showed from our intelligence community that there were imminent attacks against our interests.
Oh, he's listening to our intelligence community.
So
now?
the deep state. Those guys, the guys that hate America. Those guys like. And all these people are like, oh, yes, our intelligence community is saying so. Okay, well, first of all, I don't know that our intelligence community is saying so. In fact, people who've seen the intelligence said that's a total lie. But nevertheless, even if our intelligence community was saying, I'm sorry, we like our intelligence community, the same intelligence community that said that Russia was responsible for interfering in our election, that Donald Trump consistently took down Vladimir Putin's word over our intelligence community.
It's a little cherry picking.
Yeah, I'm salty about his supporters who have no ability to think critically. It's just a bunch of lemmings all going off a hill. I can't stand it. It drives me up the wall, just crazy up the wall.
I mean, war is the biggest thing. I'm very salty about that as well. This week, I interviewed Chris Grell of the Human Rights Campaign, and it was on the Trump administration's track record with LGBTQ Americans, which has come under fire yet again because the Department of Interior apparently removed sexual orientation from its anti-discrimination guidelines. So it removed sexual orientation from the 2017 Ethics Guide regarding workplace discrimination, which currently reads, "You shall adhere to all laws and regulations that provide equal opportunities for all Americans, regardless of race, color, religion, age, sex, or handicap." The 2009 version under the Obama administration includes the word sexual orientation. So Chris at the Human Rights Campaign said the latest attack is disappointing but not a surprise. It's just the latest in a move for the Trump administration to wipe LGBTQ Americans out of the executive branch and mention of them. And, I really think that this, in a time where we have war and we're talking about human rights across the world, when we're really ignoring them here, it just looks very hypocritical, and I don't think we can morally make a stand for war in a Middle Eastern country when our own human rights are pretty lackluster, and especially with the moves that the Trump administration has been taking against LGBTQ Americans.
Because that's what his base wants.
Right.
And,
I mean, right. I can't even, there's nothing to even.
What can you say? I mean, are we really, it's like, one step forward, two steps back. I keep using this phrase, but because I believe it, that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. I have a very good guy friend who's gay. And I remember from 2004 when Ohio, which was one of the states that determined that election, when the entire campaign in Ohio was run on the scare tactic by the Republican National Committee, which was chaired by a chairman who then came out of the closet, ironically enough. But when Karl Rove and he ran this entire campaign in Ohio, saying that if John Kerry's elected, we're going to have gay marriage and gay marriage and gay marriage, and effectively scared people into voting in Ohio. Enough people voted against the issue to tip the election. And then 10 years later, marriage equality is the law of the land, right? Around 10 years later. And he and I marveled because we were friends in 2004. We're obviously still friends today, and certainly were in 2014. And we marveled at how quickly this issue went from bad to good. And then I think maybe we were just a little naive because, like anything else, one step forward, two steps back.
Right.
And it's a question of, it's a slog. Everything is a slog. And maybe we shouldn't have been patting ourselves in the back that, oh, okay, like happy days are here for the LGBTQ community, because so much of it depends on who's in charge, and so much of it depends on the president that you get. And God knows if there's a second term, what he's going to do with respect to this. All the things that you think are not feasible, sometimes, my imagination has become much more rampant.
Oh my gosh. Can I just tell you that the other night I was just playing like a card game, and it was like, you asked a question, if you could Freaky Friday and switch bodies with someone for one day, who would it be? And as gross as it would be to switch bodies with Trump, I mean, I feel like I could do so much good in just one day and just redo everything. And I kept thinking that could be a possibility. And
it could be, but then you Freaky Friday back, and then he'd undo everything you did anyway.
I know, and it got me really hopeful. But
yeah, but I mean, but
I had a moment of hope.
Right, but it's I know how in shape you are, so I can only imagine how completely weird you'd feel being in Donald Trump's body. But that's neither here nor there. But it's just I don't know. Especially when it comes to women's issues, LGBTQ issues of race, issues of religion. You look at, I mean, I don't want to get into what makes me salty on a different note, but look at all these anti-Semitic attacks in New York City. And I'm Jewish, obviously. I live in New York. And I said to somebody, I said to more than somebody, I said it to several people, if you as a Jew can't feel safe in New York City, where in the world can you be safe? I mean, it's not Israel, because Israel is not a safe place, right? Just generally by its very existence, right. It's a dangerous place to live. Where as a Jew can you be safe, if not in New York City? Where on earth? And the answer is nowhere.
No, can I just tell you, in Florida, so I went to the JCC for kindergarten.
Right.
And I remember when I was younger being absolutely terrified because there were 3 KKK members who had a little demonstration in front and just being
told me this, yeah.
Scared for but I mean in Florida as well, which is...
Yeah. I mean Florida, right. But Florida has, parts of Florida that are Florida,
It's an interesting place.
Yeah, it's an interesting place. But New York City, like, think about it. And granted, it's against the Hasidic community, who are obviously very outwardly proud of their religion and dress that way and keep those traditions a lot more than secular Jews like me. But still, I mean, it's still, you have it in Brooklyn. I mean, Brooklyn. Seriously, right. It's like Brooklyn.
It's very unsettling. We had a lot of salty stuff. What's something you're looking forward to this week or this month?
I think, so what am I excited? I'm excited about this new year. I think I'm excited about this being a presidential year. I'm hoping it's not going to end in heartbreak for us. But that's quite importantly, I'm just excited for this year. I know everybody keeps saying it's not a new decade. The decade ends at the end of this year, but I'm thinking of the 20s. This is the roaring 20s as a new decade. And so I'm excited. I'm just optimistic and excited about the decade, excited about the year, excited about this initiative that we have with Gretchen and Diana and everybody else who's been so supportive, including, you're like Exhibit A of somebody who's been so wonderful and supportive. What about you? What are you excited about?
I'm excited I also am excited for a presidential year. I've been hanging out with my brother and talking to him and seeing him do well.
He's up in Rhode Island, right?
He's in Rhode Island. He's a small business owner. I think he's going to accomplish a lot. And I'm also excited to run a 5K with you this year, Julie.
So it's interesting that you say that. I just got a text message from an old high school friend who lives down in DC and is incredibly accomplished and awesome, and I can talk about her another time, but she just asked me if I wanted to run a Spartan race with her.
Yes. They're so fun.
Really?
So I have done all the Spartan races, Tough Mudder, Rugged Maniac, all of them.
Okay, you think they're fun because you love this stuff, but what's harder, a 5K or this? Okay,
well, you need to do a little cross training. So if you like doing like upper body stuff, like lifting yourself over a wall, going in mud.
I'd rather do that than run.
Okay, it's really fun. In the Spartan, they have a Spartan sprint, which is like a 5K distance.
That's what she said. What's the Spartan sprint? So tell me what that is.
Oh my, I get so excited to talk about this.
Okay.
We've hit our stride here. So there's different events. For example, you have to carry heavy bottles of water. I remember I did one at Citi Field and we had to go up and down the stadium stairs holding, that was a part of it. And then you had to go over big walls. And so really use your upper body strength. And then there was, in some of the courses, there's mud where you have to like go and military crawl under. Right. They're balancing, different kind of things like that, which are really fun. So if you have cross training.
How much running is involved here?
You will still have to go the distance of a 5K, but you get to stop and start.
Okay. So it's better than a 5K.
Yeah. And you know what you could do? You could wear a Lift Our Voices t-shirt. Double cross promotion. Look at that.
All right. You obviously really, you know what's going to happen? I'm going to sign up for
it
and you're going to run it for me again.
I know. I am. And you're going to place.
And I'm going to place. Although I'm still pissed off that you didn't place first in the over 40, even though you're under 40.
I support you doing this, and I will go down to cheer you on. That's how much I believe in this.
I mean, all right.
I'm going to enable you for this.
All right. Well, I haven't signed off on it yet.
Okay.
Due to the fact that you have this neck issue, which I need to address one way or the other. But if not for the neck issue, Emily, I'd be right there.
You know what? You should sign up, and if the neck issue becomes a thing, I'll be right there.
You'll step in?
I'll step in.
Okay. Well,
I'll be so sad about it. I'll step in.
Why don't you do it with me?
Actually, let's just do it.
All right. Well.
And we could have Lift Our Voices swag. We could just like.
Yeah. Maybe we can do
it'd be fun.
Maybe we could do it as a fundraising initiative. Like if you want to watch Julie humiliate herself in a Spartan race, maybe I could wear a GoPro on my forehead while I'm doing it.
I have GoPros. We could do it.
Really?
Yeah, we could do a GoPro event. It'll be two very different perspectives.
That's very unkind.
It'll be really amusing.
All right, everybody. On that sad note where Emily's mocking me, have a great week. Bye.
Bye.